This is striper fishing on the lower Potomac, and I'm going to show you how I caught and cooked the striped bass that I caught. Every late fall and winter on the lower Potomac where I live in Piney Point, Maryland, the striper run really gets going. They're pushing out of the Potomac River and all the rivers that are tributaries of the Potomac, and it's one of my favorite times to fish because it can be fairly easy to spot large schools. The key to finding large schools of striped bass, or locally known as rockfish, are these active birds right here. If you're seeing these active birds and associated splashes on the surface, you know you are in for a good day of fishing. And this day was no exception. I hooked up with a nice mid 20-inch fish almost immediately after stopping the boat. And this time of year, my favorite way to catch them is light tackle casting. I'm using a 1-ounce jig head with a soft plastic body on a 6-foot rod and 10-pound braided line, and I'm just casting and letting the lure sink a little bit after it hits the water. And normally those fish pick them up pretty quickly. Now sometimes during the year you got to fish at the actual bottom, so you might need a heavier jig head, but the concept is still the same thing. This one ended up being 22 inches, so after about 30 minutes, I was already limited out with my 2 rockfish for the day, so I headed back home to clean them up and cook them up as well. Now, thanks to a lot of viewers' comments, I realized I was wasting a lot of fish. I used to be someone that just cut right there and then did a fillet, and that was about it. But this time I wanted to try some different parts of the fish as well. So to start off, I used my serrated knife to really get through the skin of the rockfish. It makes it a lot easier because they have such thick scales that I go down the spine with the serrated knife, and then I eventually come back with the actual fillet knife and really make it a clean cut over the ribs and get the whole fillet off. And if I could give you any advice, it would be take your time. You are in no rush to fillet this fish. Take your time, let your knife do the work, and you're going to end up with a really nice fillet and not much meat left on the carcass itself. Now, of course, you want to flip over the fish and get the other fillet as well, and it's just the same process as that one side. And previously, this is where I would stop, but now I've started cutting off the collars of the fish and also the belly too. So I got collar meat right there, I got some belly meat above it, and 2 fillets all from this one fish, and the carcass and the head I put in the freezer for crab bait later on this summer. Now, the first dish I made were jalapeno stuffed with rockfish dip, and I gotta say, out of all the recipes, this one surprised me the most. You start off with some softened cream cheese, add some Hellman mayonnaise. I did 2 big glops, the juice of 1 lemon, some Old Bay, put a good amount in there because you want to taste it, some liquid aminos, or you could use soy sauce or even Worcestershire sauce as well, and then mix it all up. Do not put the fish in until now, and then you're going to gently fold it together so you don't break it up too much. Next is getting your jalapenos ready. I like cutting them in half because I find it easier to stuff them with the rockfish dip. So remove the seeds and everything on the inside, and they're nice little boats to be able to put the rockfish dip in. Now don't be shy, fill these things up and then top them off with some more Old Bay, which makes them absolutely delicious, of course. Put them in the oven at 400 degrees for 10 minutes, and then they are ready to go. These things were absolutely delicious and the biggest surprise out of all the recipes so far. But I got more for you. The next recipe I made was actually rockfish on the half shell. And on the half shell means I didn't take the skin off the bottom before I put it on the grill. So you start off by just putting some olive oil on there as a binder and put on the seasoning of your choice. I love fajita-ish by Dizzy Pig, so that's what I went with. Coat it pretty liberally because you're only seasoning one side. So you're not going to get all that flavor on the other side of it because you have that skin keeping the fish protected from the flame. Make sure you put plenty on there. This is about how much I normally put on there, but your amounts may vary based on the seasoning you have. Now, I take it over to my RecTech grill and it's set to about 400 degrees, and I'm going to leave it on there for 15 minutes. And you're not going to touch it. You can leave it closed on there for 15 minutes. Don't have to worry about moving it or anything like that. And when you come back, it's going to look beautiful like this and should flake really easily just like that. And I gotta tell you, this new way of cooking it was absolutely delicious as well. Leaving the skin on is the only way I'm going to cook them from here on out. Like I said in the beginning of the video, when I ate rockfish, I only normally ate the fillet. But after all the comments, I realized I got to try different ways. So I actually cut off the throats or the collars of the fish, and I was going to use Danos Seasoning. I've never used Danos before, so I used the crunchy, and I also used the cheesy, I think it's called. Put some olive oil on there as a binder and sprinkled it on both of the collars. Now the collars are that lower part just below the fillet and the head, and I've heard they're full of meat and delicious, but I couldn't find anyone really doing this with striped bass. So onto the RecTech they went at about 375 with those seasonings. I put them on there for at least 10 minutes at this point, and they were looking pretty close to be done. But after 15 minutes total, they looked absolutely perfect, and I gave it a taste. It was delicious. I do not know why I have not been eating the collars the whole time I eat fish. So that was actually the crunchy Danos. This is going to be the cheesy Danos, and this one, I didn't like the seasoning as much, but still, the meat itself is probably the best part of the rockfish I've had so far. Make sure you drop a comment with some other recipe suggestions that you have.